Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, the wrestling podcast here on YouTube and Daily Motion. At this time, we are working on a couple of other areas to try to, broaden the horizons of this particular podcast, but for the time being, just on YouTube and Daily Motion for the time being. And this episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, as I stumble over my words right off the bat today, is going to focus on Monday Night Raw from May 22nd, 2017. And this was a decent Raw. I won't say this was a crazy good Raw by any stretch of the imagination, but they did what they needed to do in this show in terms of progressing their storylines for further down the road. One thing I really liked, they were going through the intro at the beginning of the show. I actually like this beginning as well. They go through that intro, and it immediately gets interrupted, like with no theme song or anything from the Raw theme song or anything in that sense. It gets interrupted immediately by Bray Wyatt. So it immediately cuts back into, you get the weird beginning, and it goes into his music, and they go into the arena right off the bat. I thought it was a really good opener. Bray cuts his promo on Brock Lesnar, the match itself, the Fatal 5-Way match itself, calling himself the one true savior and the only one that can beat the Beast and everything in that sense. And he gets interrupted by Roman Reigns, by of course the boos and everything in that fun sense. And you kind of know how that one goes. I don't even think we really need to mention it anymore with what happens with Roman. As Bray and Roman cut a promo on each other, and everything, Kurt Angle comes out and makes a match between the two of them. He doesn't even really cut a very long promo on this one. He comes out there. It's like, I don't even want to wait until Extreme Rules or even later tonight. I just want to have a match between you two right now. And so they come back from commercial break, and you have the match with Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns. I thought this was a rather decent match between the two of them. We had seen some matches with them in the past, with Hell in a Cell and everything in that sense. So we've seen it before, but it's been a few years, really, since we've seen much with the two of them by themselves. Samoa Joe does come down at the end of the match. He goes after Roman Reigns right off the bat and makes it look like he was going to not want to get revenge on Bray Wyatt, but then he decides to get revenge on Bray Wyatt, and he starts putting the coquina clutch on Bray Wyatt for what he had done the week before. Roman Reigns, he enters the fray at this point, and he kind of chases off Samoa Joe. It looked like Bray Wyatt was going to get a little bit of Seth Rollins, but he eats a Superman punch for his troubles. Like I said, the match was fine. This segment, the segment afterwards, it was fine as well. I wasn't a big fan of them making a tag team match with them for the end of the night. You get that in the next segment. You had Rollins and Reigns going up against Samoa Joe and Bray Wyatt. It's like, okay, type of feel here. It's like, okay, they're going with this again, and they're also going off the aspect right now that Bray Wyatt and Samoa Joe really shouldn't be getting along, yet they have the team. So, and they just done a bit tonight where it's like they weren't on the same page, and now they have the team later on in the evening. So I wasn't a big fan of that particular one, but we'll talk about that main event a little bit later on. But at the end of this segment, the Drifter appears again. And as he's been doing over the last month or so, he's just been appearing here and there. This time he appears again in front of Kurt, and Kurt just, like, with Elias Sampson not saying a word or anything, it's like, you know what? Since you've been showing up, you haven't had a match. You're gonna have a match now with Dean Ambrose. So, and Drifter just kind of gives that nasty look at him. It's like, okay, type feel, and it came off rather good. I do like the Drifter segments. I just like how he drifts in, strumming the guitar, and then he walks away, just strumming the guitar again. I just like what they're doing with him here on the main roster so far. Up next, you had a Sasha Banks interview, basically talking about her feud and match for later in the evening when Alicia Fox saying that, you know, after we have this match tonight, I'll be rid of the crazy. I won't have to deal with them anymore and everything in that sense. They get interrupted, and she gets interrupted by Alicia Fox and Noam Dar. And yeah, it kind of just set up for the night, set up for their match later on in the evening. I do like the aspect that Noam Dar wants to continue, wants to say something, but like Sasha Banks won't let him say anything at all inside of this segment, but nothing too much to it. And like I said, set up for them having their third match now in 3 weeks for later in the evening. Like I said, they're kind of just doing nothing at the moment with Sasha Banks in the well, they're doing something obviously, but they're not keeping her in a super prominent role. This is like a secondary, which is good that they're actually attempting secondary feuds and everything in that sense within the women's division. But they do have her in the secondary spot at the moment because you have Alexa Bliss and Bayley going after the women's title, which we'll talk about that one actually in a little bit as well. But up next was Elias Sampson, or the Drifter, going up against Dean Ambrose. You know, first of all, I absolutely love the fact that Corey Graves, again, he doesn't change his thought processes on people from their NXT time to their main roster time, like Enzo Amore and Big Cass. He doesn't change his thought processes on Enzo. He doesn't do it again here with Elias Sampson. I love the fact that it's like after Elias Sampson had got done singing his song, or was singing a song, and gets interrupted by Dean Ambrose, who comes out. But which, by the way, Elias Sampson already getting that heat that he had in NXT here on the main roster. He's getting booed pretty hard on this one. He getting booed pretty hard on that for the song he sang. It was interesting that they had Miz and Maurice out there. Not on the aspect that, you know, Dean Ambrose was out there. They don't bring him out at all. They're just there. They're just there, and then they finally get introduced a little bit late into a little bit later on when Dean Ambrose comes out. This match was actually a pretty good match. I did rather enjoy this match. The two of them put on a pretty good match. The ending came with Miz coming down after it looked like Dean Ambrose was going to pick up the victory, and he attacks Elias Sampson to give Sampson the win, so DQing Dean Ambrose. So, which plays into the whole thing of the whole stipulation to their match at the pay-per-view, being that Dean gets disqualified, he can lose the title. So Miz kind of comes out there and just tips his hand right beforehand with the pay-per-view. But like I said, it also is a decent way of continuing on with the story as well with this one. So I thought it came off rather well. I actually skipped something here now that I'm looking at it, and I actually kind of liked what was going on through this one, which was the Akira Tozawa Arya Daivari match. The match itself was a rather quick match, but they did this bit where the commentators would continually cut to Brian Kendrick, who was watching the match. I like the fact that he had his back turned to the actual camera while he's watching the match where the TV was, and he would turn around to give his insight to the commentators and everything. And it was pretty much the setup for the Akira Tozawa and Brian Kendrick street fight that's going to happen on 205 Live. I actually thought it was a good segment. Quick match, nothing really much to it. Tozawa won the match, but I liked what they did in the terms of building everything going towards the street fight on 205 Live for the next night. So after the Miz, Elias Sampson, and Dean Ambrose segment, which I thought was also a good way of going in the terms of telling their story, though it makes it come off that Miz has already tipped his hand on what he wants to do at the pay-per-view. They go backstage, and a referee is guiding Big Cass somewhere, which he's trying to find out what happened. It's like, and the ref doesn't know. He's just said to get you in some way, and they find Enzo Amore knocked out. So they cut to commercial there. And they come back and they're asking Enzo questions. Obviously, no one knows who did it or anything in that case. And then Cass gets up as they're taking Enzo to the... Cass gets up, and as they're taking Enzo away to get medical treatment, he looks at Kurt, who's there, and it's like, you better find out who did this before I do. Which makes me feel like heel turn coming. Heel turn coming. They're gonna turn Cass at this point. At least that's how I feel. They could obviously do it in a different way or something in that sense as well. But it makes it feel like that heel turn's finally coming, and maybe they are gonna break off Enzo and Cass before they ever put the tag titles on them in any way. And yeah. We will we'll talk a little. There'll be a little snippet more about this a little bit later, but yeah, we'll see where they go with this one. But I feel like that heel turn's coming. It definitely is. So up next was Finn Balor versus Carl Anderson. Before the match, Finn Balor was cutting a promo on the Fatal 5-Way, everything in that sense. He gets interrupted by Paul Heyman, who basically he goes through everybody on the in the Fatal 5-Way and calls the first 4 of them all victims, and then he gets to Finn Balor and he gives them this glowing, praising promo, putting over Finn in every way, and then Finn basically he's the only one he doesn't call a victim to Brock Lesnar, basically, in that sense, and of course, Finn cuts a quick promo back, telling to send a message to Brock Lesnar, everything in that sense. The match with Finn Balor and Carl Anderson, though, I thought was a decent match. I thought it was pretty good. The two of them worked really well together. Obviously, they've been through the times in Japan and everything, so they kind of know each other. The match itself, nothing really memorable to it. It was just another way of putting Finn Balor over in this match, but otherwise was a rather decent match, and Finn goes over in the end with a coup de grace. So yeah, overall, decent match, good enough segment, kind of puts Finn on that upper level, saying it's like, okay, they might be putting, maybe we are going to have Finn Balor versus Brock Lesnar here at that pay-per-view. That I still laugh whenever I think of that pay-per-view name. Great Balls of Fire. Man, I always laugh at that one because it's so bad. It's such a bad name for a pay-per-view. But they did it. Up next was Alicia Fox versus Sasha Banks. This was a fine match. It was a rather quick match again, just like the week before. So it was a rather quick match. Sasha going over in the match itself. The ending basically kind of said, yeah, they're going to keep going with this because Noam Dar gets in the face of Sasha Banks, which gets him slapped for what he did, which, yeah, okay. And then Alicia Fox lays out Sasha Banks with the afterwards and with the axe kick. So you assume they're going to continue on with this. Again, they're not, like I said, this is kind of like that little second feud going on in the women's division. There's really nothing much to it in the terms of everything. Like these segments aren't too bad by any stretch of the imagination, and they're kind of having them trade wins for the time being as well. I wonder if they're gonna set it up to where Alicia wins the next week by interference or something like that, or whatever they're going to do. But they're obviously going to continue on with this. They're trying to get through other things, and maybe they're doing something with Sasha Banks later on. In that case, so it's kind of her way of being on TV for the time being without really being in a significant feud at this point in time. Up next was a backstage segment, actually, with Apollo Crews and Kalisto. So these two were buddies in SmackDown, so they're, okay, that kind of works on the aspect that they should be talking with each other. Kalisto kind of was talking about this whole Titus brand thing, and everything that was going on with Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil. He also subtly accuses Apollo Crews of attacking Enzo earlier in the night, which obviously kind of ticks off Apollo Crews in that case. And then Titus comes in, and a match had already been put together between Kalisto and Apollo Crews for later on in the night to go along with it. This segment wasn't too bad and everything. I like the aspect of Titus trying to bring in Kalisto as another member of the Titus brand and everything in that sense. This is definitely not up there on one of their better parts that they've been doing with Titus O'Neil, but it didn't come off all that bad either. I've been kind of liking what they've been doing with Titus O'Neil as of late, but this was definitely not one of the better ones in that sense of it. But that does set up their match for later on in the evening, which I'll talk about in a couple more segments here, because we had another promo and another interview to go along with this. So you had a Goldust promo. And by a Goldust promo, I mean a classic Goldust promo, where he's sitting in front of the camera. He's in the director's chair like he used to be, and kind of going with the mannerisms. Obviously a little bit different look. Doesn't have the robe on or anything in that sense like he had done. He's in more of a suit type thing now. Kind of doing the old mannerisms and everything in that sense. Like, it looks like they're bringing back the old Goldust in some way, shape, or form, which will be an interesting way to go, interesting way of seeing where they go with this down the road here. Because that old Goldust character was really good back in the day, and they're going to try to bring a little bit of that magic in here. One thing I like is that someone, like, midway through hands him a piece of paper. He takes a look at it. It's like, this is my movie. I don't need a script. And just chucks it. I love the line. I thought it was great. Good to see classic Goldust promo in this one. I don't know how it's going to come off on this day and age, but it came off really well. I liked what they did here. Like I said, classic heel Goldust promo. I liked it. Up next, though, was a promo, or not a promo, but an interview with Alexa Bliss on, basically on her match with Extreme Rules, and she goes off completely, like, goes off completely saying, like, I want to continue, I want to do this more and more to Bayley, like the way the kendo stick shot and everything. Like, she even plays it off as like, I'm going to cover her and welts throughout the entire match at the pay-per-view and everything. I thought the interview was actually kind of good. The promo from Alexa Bliss was really well done. And then she also mentions about having to face Mickie James later in the night. I thought this interview was really good. I thought this was actually a very good one in the terms of her promos. It got over the fact of what she wanted to do at the pay-per-view and the kendo stick on a pole match, even though I don't like the freaking match stipulation. It gets over the fact of what they did. It continues the story of the motivations of your champion going into the match itself. And you get something a little bit later on in the night when you have Alexa Bliss go up against Mickie James as well, which I'll talk about here in a moment, because you have Apollo Crews going up against Kalisto. This is an alright match. The storyline of this match was that Titus was trying to coach Apollo Crews throughout the match, but he starts yelling and almost distracting Apollo Crews throughout the match, which cost him the match in the end. So you kind of have this like dissension now between Apollo Crews and Titus O'Neil to go along with it. Not like I said, not a bad match. Kalisto goes over because of how that was going, and they continue on that story with what they were doing with Titus O'Neil and Apollo Crews. I wonder if this is going to set up Apollo Crews to be still a babyface, and Titus O'Neil, him and Titus O'Neil having a match down the road. Though I do like the aspect that it's like, even though he's not getting pops, like Apollo Crews isn't getting much in the terms of like crowd reaction still when his music hits. I like because it was a little bit more. It's like, obvious, like, but I think Booker mentions it on commentary. It's like, Titus Brand has to be doing something for him, because that's probably one of the better pops he's had since he's been up here to go along with everything. So they're kind of mentioning their crowd reactions and everything to go along with it. So not a bad segment. Up next was Matt Hardy going up against Sheamus, and I thought this was a really good match. These two did a really good job in this match with just everything. It was like the stipulation to the match was the winner of this match gets to pick the stipulation at Extreme Rules. The match itself, in the terms of saying everything, yes, it was a really good match. I wouldn't say anything really memorable happened inside of the match. It was kind of your typical fare between in the terms of their moves and everything in that sense. You had the ending come with Jeff Hardy going out to take because you had Matt Hardy outside the ring, and then you had Cesaro looking like he was going after Matt Hardy. Jeff does a dive over Matt and takes out Cesaro, which distracts Sheamus and allows Matt Hardy to get back in the ring to do the twist of fate to pick up the victory. After the match, they make the stipulation, which Matt cut the promo. And he cut it very intensely too. He even brought out the his broken voice for the beginning. He goes like, "Yes," type moment. So he like I said, he gives you those little snippets of the broken character every now and again inside of there. And then he cuts a rather intense promo saying that they were going to lock them up inside of a steel cage for their match at Extreme Rules, which not a bad way of going. That should be an interesting one. I'm glad they didn't just like go the whole aspect, just like we just should do ladder matches with these guys. No, we're going to do a steel cage match this time with the Hardys. So that should be interesting, and probably going to be an indication that we're going to get a swanton off the top of the cage. Yeah, that's probably where they're going to go with it at some point. I don't know, but we'll see how that match ends up going. But actually, I like the segment. I thought it was good. Continues on, and now you have the stipulation for the Extreme Rules match. Up next was Tony Nese versus Austin Aries. Again, I thought these two put on a good match. You had Neville at ringside again, and Austin Aries. This was really well done, because it looked like at the end of the match, it looked like Tony Nese was about to do like a reverse suplex, but and they are still playing off the knee subtly with the knee injury with Austin Aries. It's still taped up, and people kind of still go after it and everything, but it's not to the point that it hurts him so much that he can't do certain things in that facet of it. But at the end of the match, you have Tony Nese looking like he was about to do a reverse suplex. Austin Aries kind of like blocks it with his legs and everything, and then goes straight into the last chancery to finish off the match, which they do announce that Austin Aries and Neville have a match at Extreme Rules again, this time with it being a submissions match. Okay, that kind of works, because both of them do have a submission finisher, so so it does kind of play off of everything. After the match, you have Tony Nese in the ring. Neville kind of attacks him and puts him in the rings of Saturn, as you have Austin Aries just like trying to clap at like praising, subtly praising, and by subtly praising I mean like the condescendingly way praising Neville for beating up on a guy he had just beaten and everything in that sense. So that is what they did. That's how they went with everything. Not too much to it. I thought the match itself was good though, and like I said, you have them both showing off their submissions going into a submission match. So they did what they needed to do there. I thought. Up next was Mickie James going up against Alexa Bliss. Not too much to this. Not too much more to this match. I thought it was an all right match in the end. And again, it continues on continues on the storylines of what they're working into Extreme Rules, and that's kind of what you need them to do. You don't necessarily need them to be doing something amazing every single time. You just need them to continue the story and continue it in a logical way, in some way, shape, or form. So they needed to tease this whole the whole aspect is, can Bayley bring herself to using weapons or doing an extreme moment in the terms of having the kendo stick or anything in that sense. So after the match, after Alexa wins, she grabs the kendo stick again, whacks another really stiff shot as well, just like the week before. Whacks Mickie James across the back with it and looks to continue on. Bayley comes out to make the save, and she when she comes out, it looks like she was about to get in the ring, but obviously Alexa Bliss would be ready for him. So she slides out, knocks down Alexa Bliss, and grabs the kendo stick, and Alexa just bangs. So it makes it feel like, okay, they're having this thing that, okay, Bayley will be willing to potentially use a weapon in the match. So she makes the save at the end. So like I said, it was like I said, it's nothing amazing, but I was listening to the crowd reaction for it. And as soon as Bayley picked up the kendo stick, the crowd popped. For it. You heard a definite boost in the audience at that point. It's like, oh, she's actually going to go after Alexa Bliss with it, and you have that potential of her actually using the weapon for the match itself at Extreme Rules. So again, it continued the story and it did what it needed to do. Like I said, it was nothing amazing, but it did what it needed to do for the story, which is a good thing in that sense. And that's a lot of what you see on Raw tonight. That's why I said it was a decent show. You didn't necessarily have crazy, amazing stuff, but the stories were progressing throughout the entire night, and that's what they needed to do. So this leads into the main event of the night, which was Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns, or not versus, but Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns versus Bray Wyatt and Samoa Joe. They have Joe and Bray Wyatt go over in this match with I think Bray hitting the Sister Abigail on. No, it wasn't Sister Abigail. It was actually Joe causing the I think Seth Rollins to pass out to the Coquina Clutch. The match was a good match. I just wasn't a big fan of the story. Like, this was like the one story I wasn't a big fan of. They tried to play it off as like Joe and Bray were teaming out of convenience more than anything, but like there's no way they should have been teaming tonight, considering the fact that they already had interaction with each other beforehand in the set of everything, and they had like reason to not really want to team with each other in any way. In the terms of their actual story, like we've seen it with the faces, where they had a face versus face match, something happens, and now they had to team up. But they set it up to where they don't have a lot of they set it up to where they don't actually, like, the two faces don't have a beef. Like here, they have Bray Wyatt and Samoa Joe. They have a beef with each other, and then they put them in a tag match. I wasn't a big fan of the booking of the match, in the terms of the booking of that match. In there, like I said, the quality of the match was fine. I just wasn't a big fan of the booking of the match. The end of the show came with Finn Balor, and I liked Finn Balor and Kurt Angle. They were talking for the next week, and two matches get set up with everything in there. You do set up Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. But I like what they have with Finn, because Finn wasn't really interacting with anybody in the match tonight. He interacted with Paul Heyman, which is a potential if he wins the match. But I like how Finn comes in as like, why don't you have me be part of this fun and everything in that sense. So basically, he was like, I should be interacting with them type feel. And it's like, okay, we'll make a match. It'll be a triple threat match with Bray Wyatt, Samoa Joe, and Finn Balor. And then you also have Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. So they're going to all be interacting with each other in some way, shape, or form next week. Good way of going. And I like the aspect that they announced the main events a week in advance in some cases. In this one, you have something to set up to and something to look forward to going into the next week. So overall, like I said, it was a decent show. I won't say it was a great show. It wasn't a memorable show by any stretch of the imagination. But it was a decent enough show, and it did what it needed to do to set up the pay-per-view itself, which, you know, at the end of the day, I guess I can't complain, because they actually, with the exception of that main event tag match, like everything here kind of just set up going into pay-per-view or going into other storylines, and storylines were progressing. I can't complain, because what they were doing was kind of logical and every way, shape, or form, in the terms of building their stories, and the execution of them were actually kind of good tonight. They were actually good and everything in that sense. So, rather decent show this week for Monday Night Raw. So, with that being said, that is everything from Monday Night Raw this week. I thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed everything, and have a great rest of your day.